Instead, I'll rant, or not even rant, because I ranted before about the current edition of this, but I'm going to talk about my topic, which is they announced the release date for Classic WoW finally, and I've been the basically like a kind of closed beta for a lot of streamers and content creators opened up. So I've been watching a bunch of people play it, and boy, do I love me one thing in the world, it's nostalgia, and I'm getting a big old heap of it watching this stuff.
Those
Um,
those 10-cent copper pieces for your flash bombs are really going to add up, though. Let me tell you, man.
I know you were an engineer back in the day, man.
No, I played.
Oh my
I
God.
played back. Yeah, that right. Oh God, it's so weird to think.
2004.
Yeah. Oh man, that was a time and a half when getting a 100% mount speed was
You had to wait till level 60.
not common. Not a common thing to see somebody running around with 100% mount speed.
No.
A lot of people had only the 60%ers because having the 100 and bloody 50 gold you needed or so to get one was not easy to procure either.
Mm-hmm.
There were endgame raiders that didn't have 100% mount speed.
Yeah, I mean, most people flight path all over the place anyways. But yeah, so WoW Classic comes out August 27th. And for those who aren't familiar with World of Warcraft or its long story history, it came out in 2004. It's now 15 years later, and the game is still going. And it's in a very, I wouldn't say very bad place, but it's not in the greatest place it's been. I believe I covered this when the last expansion, Battle for Azeroth, came out. It was one of my topics, and a lot of people were not happy with it. And almost a year later, people are still not very happy with the expansion. They've done a lot of loot boxy, RNG based gear progression things. Yeah, that people are not too happy with. Whereas WoW Classic, with the popularity of private servers and stuff, and the famous Blizzard line, you think you want this, but you don't really want this. Well, apparently a lot of people are interested in it. I saw someone streaming earlier to 100,000 people watching him run through dead mines.
Yeah, but how long is that going to last?
Yeah, I don't think they're expecting it to like even do the numbers that retail is doing at the moment, but I think there is
I meant for our side of things, like the consumers. Like, I think a lot of people are going to be trying to capture their either youth or whatever, the good old times that aren't. It's not going to be so easy.
Yeah.
Well, the way it's going to be set up right now is that they are going to be running through patches, so to speak.
Yep, it's going to progress almost like the old game did. Not necessarily in like the same pockets of time. I think the developers,
aren't they going to do some quality life stuff?
No.
Yes, there are. Yeah, there actually have been a few things they are going to change.
Like not as much as you would think, though.
No, it's not.
It's like very small things.
But wasn't there like no group finder or something at original release or something? So, but this will have it or something.
This does not have group finder in the same way that the current one does. It's not like getting a queue. It's like the old one where you had to go into town and look for people, or go into chat and or just like join a guild. And people on servers built basically reputations for either being crappy people to go with because they ninja loot, or they'd leave early, or this guy was like really good and you could always group with them. They're kind of like trying to bring back that like meta community in the game, which a lot of people who love Classic WoW and the old school like stuff before a lot of that kind of stuff started coming around. That's kind of like the stuff that they loved about World of Warcraft that fell out of the game. And it's more, I think they're more marketing towards that niche side, because it's basically 98% like the same exact game as it was in 2004, just with some slightly better graphics.
Here's just a few of the lists that they're going to do over. They will allow add-ons. Will be still around, so you can do that kind of stuff. There are going to be to a level. The modern conveniences are going to be some making a cut. You'll be able to move like items from your mail to your bags in a far more fluid manner. Simply because it doesn't really affect game balance in any shape or form. You're not going to get personal loot. The old loot systems will be back and returning, but you'll still be able to trade items with other players who killed a boss that you did. So
Yep,
it helps reduce the.
It's basically like the old one.
Yep. So it's small. We said like small quality of life stuff and whatnot. So.
Like you can actually dismount in the middle of a flight path now. You don't have to log out of your game. You log back in. Yeah. So I just wanted to like probably talk about what they're doing, or I mean, because it's an old game. It's a lot of people who know about it know like the content and played back then and all that stuff. And I think the devs said that they're gonna basically really listen to the community about when to launch new tiers of content and roll that stuff out, which is good to hear after the kind of like radio silence that Blizzard had did post BFA and some of the BlizzCon stuff that was kind of worrisome. But I mean, I less wanted to really talk about the game specifically, necessarily, and more just kind of wax nostalgia about it, because watching the streams is like really kind of tickled that part of me, that nostalgic side, just seeing the old talent trees and watching how some of the abilities worked and how hard it is like actually just kill regular mobs and stuff. Because you were the only, I think you're only other one among us, Meta, who played a decent amount of old WoW, correct?
Yeah, honestly, it was certainly a story. It's kind of weird though, because the scaling was still pretty strong. You could run a lot of stuff. If you had the high enough level gear, you could still run a lot of things that you normally shouldn't be able to. Even in vanilla WoW, at least for dungeon wides and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But that's once you start getting to like tier 2, like Bloodfang, kind of like gear and whatnot. But when you're leveling up, it was very common for you to, if you're a spellcaster, bring a lot of drinks. Because let me tell you, your fights are going to go like this. I cast. He's dead. I sit down to get all my MP back. Wait about 30 seconds.
Yeah, and I leveled a rogue, so it was getting one fight
Rogues
with one
had
guy.
It easy. Yeah, like rogues had it really easy because they just had to wait for their energy and like to eat a little bit.
Yeah, I had to eat a lot. And if I didn't sap something and accidentally pulled 2 things, I was basically dead.
It was really funny because playing as an undead rogue, I remember one of the biggest benefits was that cannibalism was amazing. God. Yeah. It was so good because I could use that to help speed up the recovery process.
Yeah, that's another thing I'm glad that they're kind of going back to, is that the racial ability matters. They mattered a lot back in the day. Like, you would get some pretty big buffs depending on what race you were playing. And they kind of like toned those down a lot in the newer versions. I think from WoD on, they kind of like, it might have even been earlier than that. It might have been Cataclysm, but they kind of like scaled them down a lot because Trolls got a really good ability, that Berserker thing that they got. I can't remember the exact name.
The Berserker one was really good. The Orc traits were really good too.
Yeah, like humans got some good PvP. Like they got every man for himself, I think, was a good PvP like racial ability. Like they all got like interesting, cool things, and they kind of really scaled that back. Another thing was like the weapon skill that I saw, like having to grind your weapon skill up.
Oh yeah! Oh my gosh! Wow, what an old mechanic.
Yeah. Some of the old stats that weren't in the game anymore in the later editions. Like there's expertise,
a lot
attack
of stuff,
power.
A lot of the stuff like we forget about is like all the tiny little things that was that happened and whatnot around that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. There was so much work you had to do just to progress forward in something. And for some people, they like that kind of challenge. They kind of like that you have to really climb up a hill to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
but I think a big part of me, like, kind of looking at Vanilla Walls, I know there's a lot of nostalgia for it, but I also remember that there were a lot of problems with the game too.
Oh yeah, it had tons of balance issues, and
Oh,
that's why I'm most curious to see if they'll address some of those, because some classes and specs were just unplayable.
yeah.
Like, I believe shamans were extremely bad.
Oh, they were terrible. It was actually made fun of the fact that essentially the horde had only one type of tank. Your shamans didn't even tank. They didn't even make them a viable tank. They couldn't tank.
The like paladins, like you only want them in your party as healers, and they would basically like they only in the raids that you would only cast like one spell with them.
Yeah, rep pallies were not, I think, that great during vanilla. They were decent tanks. You could bring them along for the higher end tier stuff. They weren't bad, but a warrior was still considered the best because of Sunder stacks.
Yeah,
which was really good because it benefited like everybody.
The enemies could only have so many debuffs on them too. So like if you had a warlock, it was a problem with multiple warlocks and stuff because you could only put so many dots on them.
Yeah, they couldn't all contribute. I think those kind of things have been changed though, because the way spells were done back then, as well as the tagging that they had, was switched out. They've actually made I think a water dev blog post about that.
Mm-hmm.
But they made mention that like the way spells are stored and whatnot, and how items and whatnot are set in the database, are far more efficient nowadays than it was back then. And they're going to be changing some modifications so that they can actually do a lot more storing and clear up a lot more space. So I'm sure we'll probably see things like that, just quality of life changes that were really should have been there from the start, and were just limited by the time and the coding abilities back then.
Yeah, and I don't know. It just felt like you kind of like earned the gear that you got a lot more back then. You more had to like work for it, invest in it. It was less just the loot boxy random stuff, because like doing stuff in BFA, I think like my best item I just got in like some random world quest. It wasn't like a dungeon or a raid or anything. It was just something I got extremely lucky on. So
if you're a big fan of like more doing the old school way of gaming and whatnot, then I'm sure Vanilla WoW is going to be actually, as silly as it sounds, considering most games nowadays, a breath of fresh fucking air. Which is really weird to say, because that's kind of what we moved away from.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people like that. A lot of people that's why tabletops still survive nowadays. A lot of the times it's kind of like go on a quest, murder something, get some sweet, gear and gold from it. You've earned it. You went out and you did you delved a dungeon, you murdered the big beastie, you completed the task that you were given by whoever, you saved the villagers. That's deserving of a reward. Instead of just kind of doing that one world quest that gives you a really good piece of gear.
Yeah, exactly. So
just punch these dudes in the face a couple times, and we'll give you these sweet dope boots.
Yeah, so the nostalgia is real. I'm gonna play it. I don't know how long I'll stick around, because it did take a very long time to level cap compared to how it is now. Like, back then you couldn't just buy like what would equate to like level 50 in this game, and then do your last 10 levels and start playing the in-game stuff.
If you were on eBay, you could.
Oh, okay, yeah, but not from Blizzard, you couldn't.
Not from Blizzard's though.
So,
and I'm interested to see, I wonder. I'm actually very interested to see how long the nostalgia will last, and then eventually fade off. I'm wondering, how successful it will be. Maybe it will perform. Maybe it will be the golden child, and it will come up, and it'll turn out that tons of people love this, and they're very happy for quality of life, but they're loving the style that it is. Or maybe wears off. Maybe we see, as you stated, or as Mal noticed, that eventually just fades off, and people can remember, yeah, this is why we did move away from this.
Yeah.
Who knows? I hope it succeeds. I do want to see it to succeed, because I do feel like there are a lot of good things from Vanilla WoW that have unfortunately been very much lost in a lot of new iterations.
I think there's a market for both.
I think so.
The Vanilla is always like the most popular private server thing for a reason. Like, I think Vanilla could really stick around and do it. I'm not sure about like BC or Wrath. Like, if they eventually did those, I don't know how many people would like play that.
You'd probably get people. Well, I mean, Wrath was when the most people were playing, and
Yeah.
BC only saw an increase. I know BC was pretty loved by a lot of people, and Wrath was generally very well loved by a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd love to
I
see
think
a
it's-
Wrath one.
I loved Wrath. And I thought BC was okay, but Wrath, like that was really the pinnacle for me.
So having never really played World of Warcraft, every single time you guys say Wrath, my brain auto-completes Rathalos.
Dun. Yeah, it was actually a whole expansion like involved trying to take down a Rathalos.
Yeah.
That's literally what the whole.
Can I
expansion
see
was
the
about.
Lich King ride a Rathalos? Please.
It'll be the cross, the Monster
Please.
World, Monster Hunter World, and of WoW crossover.
I mean, they've crossed over with everything else. Why not with that?
Why not? But yeah,
that could surprisingly work actually, but
I
it's
would
just
love it.
just insert monster in the game.
Oh
but-
yeah, absolutely. Because Monster Hunter works with everything because it's just put this monster into your lore now. Bam, it's there.
Well, you have the Final Fantasy 14 crossover, so
Exactly.
Like, so the
They
behemoth
lured it.
is what I'm about to go up against, and I've read that you have to actually have a tank, a healer, like a DPS. Like you have to do the
It's-
traditional MMO.
You don't have to. I want to say this right now. You don't have to. But it helps. Having somebody who takes the aggro and is kind of like a lancer with a shield or something, and then having somebody who's got like the wide area effect and speed drinking really does help. And then the other two people can just like do what the fuck they want. But it really does help to have that kind of thing because man, oh man, Behemoth will he has a lot of area effects that will hit multiple people if they are placed wrong. He has a very big swinging arc, and if you're the tank, he does have a move that can essentially tear into you and shred you up if you don't have somebody else popping him to kind of stagger him. So there's a lot of stuff there. There's a bleed effect, I think, on one of his really hard hitting moves, which is why you kind of want somebody who's focused on like healing everybody else. But you don't need it. I've succeeded against it without it, but it definitely helps. So there you go.
There you go. And that's the end of my topic. And that's the end of this episode of 82 Podcast of Five Rings. Your source of enlightenment with video games, tabletop, anime, film, and tech. Each episode of Podcast of Five Rings releases Monday mornings on iTunes and SoundCloud and topic by topic day by day on YouTube with the full video on Friday. Check us out on Twitter, Podcast of R, Facebook, P5R Podcast, Meta and Lily Stream, twitch.tv/PSO Flow. Tetz's blog at I always forget the name of the website. Plug
the
it.
Geeky Spirit.
There you go, the Geeky Spirit. I need to. Okay, I'm going to type this right now in the notes. TheGeekySpirit.com, not .org.
Yeah.
Dude cam.
Yeah, we're close to E3, guys. I think it's less than a month now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're getting really close.
And I hope we get more Iceborne stuff in 3.
We will. E3 is going to show off a lot amount. They've already stated that there's going to be Final Fantasy VII there. We've got Iceborne coming up for E3. I'm looking forward to it. Possibly Ghost of Tsushima or Neo 2. Maybe both if we're lucky.
And then after Gen Con soon.
Yes,
So-
the June Con.
Summer's here, boys.
It's coming. And
All
I
right.
love it. Bring the warmth.
I love it too. And on that note, we will see you guys next week.
Later.
Bye.
Goodbye.